Welcome back to Scratching the Surface, a horror movie podcast. My name is Justin, aka Money,
And my name is Cody, aka Junes.
and currently it is December 27th. So we both of you, well, I speak on behalf of Cody as well. We hope you guys had a Merry Christmas. Seriously. We were just talking and catching up before this. Seeing how we both are, because it's just that holiday break, and we did have an episode planned for like last Thursday, I believe, kind of before Christmas, and I fell ill a little bit, so we do apologize, but we're getting this episode out now, so it's going to be a good one. And yeah, we again hope you guys had a very Merry Christmas and coming up on a new year. So definitely going to be an interesting year, a lot more horror based for sure. Now that we got the pod um, on Spotify, Apple Podcast, we do have TikTok as well, on YouTube, Scratching the Surface 100. So make sure to check those out. And yeah, Cody, what are we going to be getting into today? Because this is an interesting movie, and from the ratings I've seen, my personal viewing, I'm curious to just hear your thoughts, obviously, as we dissect it. But what are we getting into here?
Today we will be discussing the 2020 film The Dark and the Wicked, directed by Brian Bertino. He directed The Strangers and
Yep.
then also The Strangers Pray at Night. I saw Pray at Night, that one was okay. The original Strangers is solid.
Yeah, it is.
So,
I have seen that. Just wanted to say that.
mhm.
The monster he did, haven't seen that, but I've heard decent reviews on it. So, but yeah.
I had seen some other movies on there too, but I didn't recognize them. So I'm in the same boat with you.
Mhm.
Those two movies from The Strangers shows that he has potential to put something decent out, although Pray at Night kind of was underwhelming. However, this is a movie that is set on a family farm in Thurber, Texas. And really, what we have here is a family that is trying to, or I should say, two family members, a brother and a sister, who are trying to help out their aging parents that are living on the farm. And I must say, this was a pleasant viewing experience. What we have here with The Dark and the Wicked is a definitely contained horror piece that knows what it wants to be, and it does not veer off course from that. With its simplicity, we're able to make those quick connections early on in the film,
Mhm.
which allows us to just simply enjoy the movie and be entertained. There's an abundance of gloomy mood throughout the film, and there's a lot of stellar bits of unease that I felt throughout. I must say that. Should also say we have some memorable performances all throughout. We have a cast here. Louise, who is played by Maren Ireland. I think she was in Sneaky Pete. Not a whole lot of other stuff. She was actually
Mhm.
in The Boogeyman as well, which was a recent release.
Yeah.
We've got Michael, the brother, who is played by Michael Abbott Jr. We have the dad. Let's find where the dad's at. I don't know if they have him listed here. Played by Michael Zacks. He doesn't have any dialogue in this entire movie. We've got a farmhand named Charlie, who's played by Tom Nowicki, I should say. The cast is fairly pared down. We don't have a whole lot of people that we have to pay attention to. It's mainly about the brother and sister trying to help out the parents, and it kind of goes from there. It's a movie that I think is definitely haunting for me, anyways, and it's very desolate. We're on an isolated location. It's cold out. The wind's howling. The wolves are howling. And there's an evil presence that lurks outside. Or is it already within the house?
That's
That's
true.
really on a surface level what we have here in The Dark and the Wicked. We play on the forces of evil and just how relentless they can be. And our characters are up against a indestructible force, and they do everything in their power to try and save themselves and save their family members.
Yeah, you nailed that perfectly, Junes. And actually, this the movie info on Rotten Tomatoes, the synopsis is so small. It goes, plagued by waking nightmares, two siblings suspect that something evil is taking over their family isolated farmhouse, and that's literally it. So you couldn't have said it better. Um, and yeah, I like how you mentioned too, like, is the evil there already, or is it within, or is it something that gets brought upon them? We don't really know. Um, and it's for us to find out. This movie overall pretty solid, I will say. Acting by Luis here, played like you said, Marin Ireland, so good. I think this cast was phenomenal overall. I didn't really have a bone to pick, just because you have two siblings who are clearly not as connected as you know maybe someone should be with their brother or sister, but and you can feel that tension in the movie, even with their mom. Their dad is on his deathbed. Um, and we get introduced to a couple other characters later on, and it's pretty straightforward. I think I only had a couple things I was kind of like scratching my head at, which we'll get into. Um, but yeah, I would definitely recommend this. It's a solid performing horror movie. Um, I don't think it did that well actually in the box office. I don't know what it is off the top of my head. Um, wasn't as solid as a lot of the other ones we've seen. But this is kind of like a standalone movie on its own. So that's probably why. But
There's something about this film and its characters. They have just an everyday common person trait throughout the film, and it actually does make it feel as if the whole incident occurred in actuality somewhere in rural Texas. That
yeah,
just is one of the things I kind of like about it. Is it feels so subdued and so small in scale that you almost feel as if it really happened. That's one quality I like about The Dark and the Wicked. And before we start getting into some of the main scenes throughout the first, second, and third act, that's just something I wanted to also mention before we dig into it.
yeah. And this movie actually reminds me of a couple things. One, it reminds me of a movie we haven't discussed, but that is The Lodge, just by the melancholy of it,
Hmm.
kind of the plot. And then also a movie we have discussed already, and that is The Witch, because you have just a family, some evils going on, and they're kind of confused, and it's just kind of brought upon them. It just reminds me of The Witch a lot, which we've discussed, and I've dissected, but it gives off similar vibes. It's more modern, but yeah, I think you said Thurber, Texas, just so isolated, so small, just this. Yeah, so I love the setting of this, and yeah, I'm excited to talk about it. Um, so let's hop into it, shall we?
Yes, sir. And like you say with the setting there, we really don't have a whole lot. We have the main farmhouse. We
Right.
have a barn for the goats that they have. We may have a few fenced in yards. There may have been a random barn that I'm forgetting, but that's kind of the setting we have to give you an idea. It's very, very remote. Town, I don't think is super close by. I'm assuming it's a 15 to 20-minute drive at least. So we're out there.
Yeah, yeah. So the movie, kind of the first act, we get a lot of screen time with the mother, played by Julie Oliver Touchstone, and she does a great job. And it's just a slow kind of burner. I will say that to preface that. Um, but it allows the characters to draw out their stories more, I think, and it all comes together in the end, with everybody. And with the mother, this is the one thing that I really didn't know, because like to keep it vague, as we've been doing the last few episodes, I won't get into like too many specifics, but she knew, to me watching, she knew something was there, and it's almost like she didn't acknowledge it. We have that scene where she's in the kitchen, and that chair excuse me, that chair comes around, and it's like she knows it's there, she just doesn't acknowledge it. I was kind of confused on that. And later on, too, Michael, her son, finds actually her diary and reads it. And Luis gets introduced to it, and a lot of things start happening. One really cool thing too with this is that they're all kind of atheists in this movie, and it's not like a Christian-based movie by any
Mhm.
means, but it's something to think about. They are non-believers. They don't believe in God. They don't believe in like an afterlife, and all these evil things are happening, and it's making them question whether they should. And I think a lot of that was journaled down by her mom. And we get some really cool shots of the farm with her, and a horrific scene uh shortly after. Um and we get introduced to the father too, who I don't think said one word in this movie, but did a pretty good job for not saying a word. But what did you think of the first act? As I kind of mentioned, it feels like a slow burner, but we get introduced to the setting, the mother, the kitchen, and kind of the paranormal stuff right off the gate. I think there's a scene in there too, where we see that demon figure. It's like a split second shot. But yeah, what did you kind of think of the first act? I'm curious.
Beautifully said. A lot of good points there. I like that you touch on some of those because they are important to this movie. I think our opening is very compelling. There was constant speculation as to the relevance of the opening scenes, like you say. We're questioning, why is the mother acting this way? Why does she look like she's so fraught by something? Why is she
Exactly. Yep.
struggling so much with something within? And our presumption is there's something, some kind of presence within or on the farm that is toying with her mind, is saying things to her potentially, is doing things that she's noticing within the house. Exhibit A is that awesome scene, and I think you mentioned it briefly, where she's in the kitchen and the chair slowly slides up next to her as if for her to step on it and maybe hang herself or just to fuck with her, maybe even.
Yeah, like
Those,
it's just sitting there with her. Even
yeah,
it's like,
yep,
hey, I'm here. Like
yep.
so.
Almost just to mess with her and let her know, like you say, I'm here.
Hmm.
And she is very fraught, like I say. They're very haunting moments. Those for me did stick with and they struck home. I definitely enjoyed those. It gets us established with our setting. And I mentioned the wolves howling, the wind howling. We get some just awesome moments and shots of this farm. And then we kind of jump into the house with the mother experiencing some of these things. The father is struggling. She's helping him out, just trying to essentially keep him alive for the most part.
Right.
Those first opening scenes get us introduced beautifully to the tone of the film, pared down, a lot of melancholy. It's cold out. The wind is howling. That's what we need to get introduced to. They do it well. And then once we start getting introduced to the other characters, the brother and the sister, we're able to open up what's left to come in The Dark and the Wicked.
Yeah, too. I like how you brought up that scene. There's a scene where she's laying next to her uh, significant other, and it's like she hears that wolf, and that fear just strikes her, and it just shows you how lonely she is. Even though they're on a farm, like they're secure, she's safe, and that probably happens every night or a lot in general. And it just
Mhm.
that she hears that howl, and it just strikes fear in her, and it just you can feel how lonely she is. I don't think the movie did a good job explaining how long the father's been sick. Um, it just we kind of just see him, and it's like, oh, this might it might have been happening for a while, but yeah, just her sitting there, just trying to get through these nights. Obviously, journaling, cooking, maybe doing some chores. That's about it. And then, like you said, we get introduced to Michael, or yeah, Michael and Luis, and we learn more about their relationship too. And I briefly touched on it, but they're not close. I think there's a scene too. They step out on the porch, and she's smoking, and she apologizes for not even like calling Michael's kids and telling them like happy birthday or anything. Just a small moment, but you feel that tension. I love that. It's like I kind of liked how the movie did that. That way, because now they have a reason. Like, oh, dad's dying. Like we gotta,
Mhm.
no matter how much we might just hate each other, or just don't keep in touch. We got, this is gonna really bring them back together. But hey, there's a twist. So, um, yeah, but that first act pretty slow, but I think it was necessary. I did like it. Um, and it's such a small cast too. It's like I said, it's pretty easy to follow. Um, and in this second act, we start seeing more paranormal stuff slowly start to happen, and we do see the mom hang herself. And this was an interesting scene, because well, actually, that kitchen scene in kind of the first act too, she ends up like chopping a carrot, and you know that knife's going to go right up to her fingers, and it's got a split second shot. She cuts off like two or three, maybe even four, and she's just grunting, and like it's obviously hurts, and she starts mincing the her like fingertips that are already cut, and it's pretty gross. And it just pans to like the next day. That's something cool too this movie does. It shows each day of the week. It's like an act in
Hmm.
itself, which is also cool. I've never really seen that in a movie, but the two kids, Michael and Luis, go running out and trying to find their mother because they see just the blood everywhere in the kitchen. And they're running, looking all over this farm, and lo and behold, she is hung by a rope in one of the barns with the goats, I think, in the goat barn. And that was pretty creepy, I'm not gonna lie. The shot they had of her legs, and she's like in that white gown too.
Yeah.
Classic, classic, I think. But they go running over, getting her down, and they bring up a question later, which I loved because it puts it in a realistic perspective. And they're like, "How did she hang herself with nothing under her feet?" I love that. What did you think of that? Because I freaking loved how they added that. It puts it in a realistic perspective, for sure.
I said earlier about this movie feeling like it's kind of got that everyday, every person type of trait. We are introduced to those two main characters, the brother and the sister. We are given an idea of their moral compass and the way they interact with each other and what their relationship is like with their parents. And there is a disconnect with their parents, and we're provided that information. And they both have some disagreements. Michael is very resistant to believing these types of things in terms of a demonic presence or a spiritual presence, a ghost. Whereas Louise, she's obviously being realistic too, but she's more willing to accept the fact that maybe there is something more going on here. There is
Hmm.
a great scene leading up to that, even with the nurse who has been at the house every other day or maybe every day to help out and provide assistance for the father to kind of just make sure he has everything he needs to keep him alive and just to
Right.
make sure he's healthy. The nurse reveals to Michael and Louise when they are at the house that she has been saying and doing some really fucked up things that are beyond the ordinary, almost to the point as if there is something more to why she is acting this way and saying certain words and phrases. I thought that was so spine tingling. I wanted to give light to it because it was a really awesome revelation. And that was the first moment for our two protagonists to be aware of, okay, is it possible that there is something here? Luis gives it more thought than Michael, but they're both realistic in the idea of there being a demonic presence or something spiritual that they can't explain. So I love that. And that's such an important scene because it then follows into the moments you were talking about with the mother hanging herself
Yep.
in the barn. Because we've already been revealed to that the mother was acting weird, saying weird things. And now we also have this question: how the hell did she hang herself? I mean, we're talking a 10-foot high roof on this barn potentially. How would a
Oh,
aging 70+ year old woman be able to do that?
exactly. Yeah. Yeah. So that was great. I loved how you touched light on that. They find her, and again, it brings them even closer because now they're like, well, who's going to take care of dad, basically? And they decide to stay. I think Michael's like, well, I can stay to the end of the week or something like that, and Luis is like, well, I'll just have to take care of him. And throughout this movie, as things start happening, they are just struggling more and more and more to just even stay in the room with him just because so much shit's happening. And things happen later that we'll touch light on. But I think at some point too, we get introduced to Charlie. Um, and I might be skipping ahead a little bit. I can't really exactly remember. Who I believe is just a helping hand, and we see them do chores around the farm, and so on and so forth. But again, with them being atheists too, when they each have their own set of like personal experiences that they just can't explain, it's insane. And you see each person's perspective, and they don't want to open up about it.
Yeah.
They don't even want to talk.
They
It shows you that
I love
tension.
that. They internalize it differently, but they're all skeptical as hell, which
Yeah,
rightfully so. I
right.
probably would be too. So I love that. I love that. And Charlie, the farmhand, I think he is a very steady character here. He provides more realism to the movie. He's been helping out the family on the farm for years, I would imagine.
Yeah, I would
And
imagine.
he
Yep.
is equally disheartened by what has taken place and transpired with the mother committing suicide and the father obviously with some ailment. He is a very steady character. I enjoyed his scenes. I don't know about you
Yeah.
personally, but he then discloses, or I think Louise, when they're out on the farm, notices while they are out and about that there are some graves on the farm. And it's revealed that the goats have been turning up dead and that Charlie has been burying them throughout the last months. And he's attached to these goats even. That just goes to show you he is a loyal farmhand. If he has
Yeah.
an emotional connection to these goats, he was naming them even.
Just yeah, basically like family at this point. So, um, and that's how a lot of farmers are. My dad being one of them. Like, you're around these people
Hmm.
for so many years. So even with you, like your dad's a farmer too. So it kind of resonates with us. But uh, they each start having their own kind of experiences. One of Michael's being he's just trying to get some sleep one night. This light starts going on and off, and I just love the simplicity of it because it kept me on my toes. I'm not gonna lie. And he gets up, checking out the windows, tries to actually go back to bed. It turns on again that light, and he's checking the parameter of the house a little, like something electrical might be going on or somebody's messing with him. And he sees his mom out there in that white gown, kind of like zombified, like corpse like dead, and obviously dead, but she starts levitating. And he just cannot believe it. And again, doesn't say anything. And I think one of the first things Luis experiences that I don't think we touched on yet is that kind of famous shower scene with her dad. She's just showering. She hears footsteps. Obviously, someone is in the bathroom with her, and boom, opens the curtain, and it's him, like demonified, or however you want to say it.
Yeah,
And
almost like flashing eyes.
like,
His eyes are flashing and they're
yeah,
distorted. Yes.
and his head's like, they have a cool scene. It's in the trailer too. His like head shaking really
Mhm. Yeah,
aggressively, and
shaking. Yep, the head
yeah,
shaking. That's a great point. And she's petrified in that scene.
yeah,
I mean, she's curled up to the back corner of
she's just
the
cowering in the
shower.
corner.
Yeah.
Yeah,
She and for these people to be based in reality and to experience something like this, their reactions do seem plausible and believable for me. And those
yep,
scenes are all great. And they obviously have discussions about the apparitions they experienced. And I believe they're out on the porch in a few scenes trying to just hash out what they personally are going through.
hmm,
Louise is telling Michael, I'm not fucking stupid. Like, I'm seeing things. I
yeah,
know what I saw. Dad was there. He was right outside the shower.
yeah,
And Michael doesn't exactly tell her off. And that's why he's open to the possibility that maybe there is more to what's been occurring here on the farm.
hmm,
And I think we also get introduced around this time, I believe, Money, to a priest who just happens to be walking near the farmland.
yeah. I don't know if it was coincidence or he might have turned up because he heard that
Hmm.
their mom died. And being a priest, visiting the family would be something you probably do. especially in like a small town, small community, and smaller area for sure. And again, just reviewing it, I kind of had some questions about him, and we'll touch light on that later. But yeah, he shows up and they talk, they discuss. Michael again expresses, "Hey, we don't believe in God," or she didn't believe in God, and they at this point they have already found their her diary and the things she's written. Like he is there, he is killing him, like things like that, paranormal things they can't even like really comprehend, and it's just conflicting with their beliefs so hard. And this priest has such great line in this movie, and it's along the lines of something like, just because you don't believe in the wolf doesn't mean he isn't out there. And that was perfect for what they have been experiencing and what is going on through their thought process. um so he hit that nail perfectly on the head. And I think they talk, they kind of catch up. He expresses, "Hey, we don't believe in all this, whatever, whatever." And I think he just kind of passes, and they actually run into him later too, Junes,
Mm-hmm.
in a more demonized way. And throughout this period, basically at this point in the movie, scene after scene is just things happening to this family. We won't cover them all, but Um, there's a great scene too that I liked. Small scene, but like their phone's ringing, their landline's ringing, and she actually unplugs it, and there's still like her mom's voice coming through. That was like, I just wanted to point that out. I love that like quick little scene there. Um, and actually, we're kind of at the point too where like Charlie, I think it's isn't it Charlie? He commits suicide with a shotgun, and he actually, or it's I think it's Charlie, and she sees Luis cutting up herself, and he hears something. He's got a shotgun ready, and he meets her face to face. And this is all an illusion. This is all an illusion, and that's what most of these things are. They're just illusions. They're not really there. But that is how this demon, if you will, is portraying itself, and that's something I learned after reviewing this and just kind of researching it. And he basically sees her. He just takes the gun to his head, and he goes, and that's another body down. So
God damn, those
it
moments
was
were,
pretty,
oh man, they
yeah,
were impactful. I loved them. I
yeah,
cared about Charlie. I did. I liked his character. I thought
yeah,
maybe he would be able to help these guys out a little bit. But god damn, his fate was sealed. And this confirms to us as the viewer, this entity, this demon, what have you, is able to be in two places at one time and can jump from location to location and latch on to somebody. Those moments with Louise's demented looking body that Charlie is seeing, it's not the real her, when she's cutting herself up. Those were pretty fucking brutal scenes, and they were definitely scary. So I thought those were good moments, and it sucked to see Charlie go. I cared for him, and that's something about the Dark and the Wicked that they give time to as the characters. And with this, we are more apt to understand and empathize, sympathize with what they're going through and experiencing. So I love that.
yeah. And at this point too, the priest does come back. They hear knocking, and they're like, "What the hell are you doing?" They open the door, and it's him, and he is just wide eyed. He looks possessed, and they keep questioning him. Their phone's ringing. They turn their backs for 1 second, and he's gone. And shit's hitting the fan. And like I said, scene after scene, things are just happening, and they cannot literally believe what they're seeing. And that's what I just love about this movie, because they're realistic people. They're
Mhm.
non-believers though, which is fine. I don't want to get into that, but um it's just conflicting because of everything they've seen, they've shared, and that they've read in a journal, and it's tug of war with them. And really cool scene too with Louise is she is watching her father for like a split moment, and he's like pinned to the ceiling too. Really cool scene, and it's just a dream. She wakes up, and she has a ton of experiences with him and just things around the farm. And I'm trying to figure out a way here, June, to kind of wrap a bow on this last act, because I
Hmm.
don't know, how do you want to dissect it? Because there's just lots of things happening. We have the nurse's death, which we haven't talked about.
Hmm.
Um, things that have happened with Luis and Michael. Michael's scene when he goes back home. I guess we could touch base on
Oh,
that.
don't talk about that one yet. God, that's such a good scene. I did love that one, so
I
I'm excited
watched
for
that and my jaw literally was to
that.
the floor.
Oh, but
Um,
yes, to tie it up in a bow, there
so
is quite a bit that happens. We have a lot of jump scares. We've got a lot of creepy moments here in the
yes,
final act for sure. I know that leading up to that point as well, I think that they did want to take the dad to the hospital and just be done with it, but the doctor that visited the house advised that he would not be able to do that and have that set up for them, which sucks. So they're pretty much
yeah,
stuck there at that point, even if they want to go home. So we also have goats that all turn up dead. We're not just having one offs. The entire herd of the goats they have at this farm show up dead. So Michael and Louise are standing there when they see the goats thinking, what in the hell are we going to do here? This is
right.
beyond our comprehension and beyond our ability to fix. But for the final act, I know that we have a part here where there is a girl who shows up at the door, and I believe it was Charlie's granddaughter, and she claimed she'd been calling and that they wanted to let them know that Charlie had committed suicide.
Right. Yep. Yeah,
And
she was saying ill it like her dialogue too just didn't seem like what a young girl her age would say, and she's like playing mind games with
mhm.
Luis, and she eventually is like teleporting into the house, scaring the shit out of Luis, and she's got like a demon voice at the end there too, which I loved.
Do
And
you smell him? I smell him too. He's close now. He's
exactly.
rotting. Yeah,
Hey,
those
that's
were some
pretty good.
good lines of dialogue because when
Yeah.
she approaches the door initially, she sounds innocent. She sounds like
Oh,
the real gal, but once she says those lines, we're like, "Oh shit."
it's just another illusion Luis is experiencing. So it's like that's a good thing too. This movie does is like even when you think there's a light of hope, something else turns up, and it keeps the ball rolling. I think,
Mhm.
but they use such simple tactics, and that's what this director does. Even from The Strangers, like such simple tactics.
Yeah.
That's a simple home invasion movie, scary as hell though.
Yes. Great point, Money. I like the correlation there because, yes, it doesn't take a whole lot of ingenuity to come
Right.
up with some of those things. And I think we see a lot of the same scares and moments of tension and the strangers that we see in this film. And that's something you'll notice from directors is they do tend to go with certain approaches on their scenes and their shots that are all kind of similar and have the same manner of style.
Well said. Yeah. So the ending to this I wasn't a fan of. I'm not gonna lie. And basically, before we get to that, Michael's scene is insane. It reminds me, correct me if I'm wrong, Junes. Have you seen, I think it's called like The Mist?
Yes. Yes.
It's similar ending. Basically, Michael's going home. He ditches Louise. She
Yeah.
wakes up and he's gone.
Straight up
And
fucking
she's
ditches her.
calling, and he's already on the road. He's been driving all night. And she's like, "You left me? Like, how could you, freaking do this?" And he knows it's inevitable that like something's gonna happen. He's getting out of there. He's been there a week now, I think at this point. A full week almost has turned. And he wants to go see his wife, his kids, and he gets home to basically an empty house. He's walking around, and lo and behold, he what he sees is, I think, his wife holding a knife. You don't really know if she killed the kids or what. That's the way it looks, is she killed her kids and then she took her own life. And he's just crying, bawling, and he pulls out his knife, which we saw from before in a different scene, brings it up to his throat, and he takes his own life. And he leans up against a wall, holding his neck, and looks again, and it's an empty kitchen is where they, were when he first walked in. And I was like, just holy shit, because he, like, again, when you think you're pulled into what's real, the movie just is like, nope, this was an illusion too. And his wife and kids come through the door. She looks over. He's there, basically already dead. She screams, and that's that. What did you think of this? This was probably my favorite scene. I know I'm kind of biased because it's like tying in the movie at the end, and that's where a lot of the action's happening. But this alone was the scene was incredible.
This scene ups my score here once we get to it easily by 10 to 20%. That's I think it's that potent and that powerful that you have to bring that strongly into your score when considering what you're going
Yeah.
to give it. So good. And I cared about Michael enough. He had enough scenes where he seems like just a normal person, and he doesn't have the best relationship with his parents, but
Hmm.
goddamn, he tried to help out. He was there. Yes, he kind of ditched her, and I understand that, and that was kind of a heartless thing to do. But he said to Louise, "I knew you'd stay. I knew you'd stay, even if I said otherwise to you." So
Exactly. He kind of knew. I mean,
yeah,
at
and
heart, he just knew. It was
not
his decision. But man,
yeah, not that we saw it coming, but there was something off in those scenes when he's driving home. It just didn't seem right. Something seemed off, and when we have that reveal of him being left sitting there dead after shooting himself, I was so shocked and floored. I didn't know what to do with myself. The oh no just ran through my mind for about
yeah,
an entire minute or two, because this guy's got a family, he's got two kids, he's got a wife, and to see that happen when it could have been avoided, oh, it hurts, and it goes to show that
yeah,
evil does not give a fuck whether you're good or bad. They don't care. They don't care if you're Catholic or atheist. When they latch on like this, there's no bounds as to what the evil will do. And we see it in this scene. And I think that's such a beautiful, haunting moment to have there. I freaking loved it.
yeah. That was insane. So I'm glad we brought light to that. Obviously, that was a huge moment for the movie. And bye bye, Michael, basically. And we're left with at this point, correct me if I'm wrong, just Luis and her dad, I think.
And the nurse. Did we talk about the nurse's
Oh, the
death yet?
nurse. Did
Oh,
she
that
die?
one's good too.
Did she die before Michael or was it
It
after?
was very close to the same time. I'm not
It
sure which one
was.
took place prior, but
It might have
boy,
been
her
after,
death.
but I could be wrong. But yeah, her
Jeez,
death was
go into it.
insane.
I want to hear you talk about it here because I just want to
She
relive the experience.
she was she felt like a fill-in for just, being like an in-home CNA kind of whatever, taking care of their dad. And she gives some advice to Luis earlier on about how there's some dark and wicked things in this world that are brought upon to people, and it doesn't matter who you are, basically, along those lines. And she turns and has a horrific death. And earlier in the movie, we see her knitting, whatever, and actually ends up taking her own life as well, and almost Luis's, but she just knocked her unconscious. They had a little fight, but she ends up stabbing herself and then stabbing each of her eyes with those knitting sticks, if you will. Um, and she goes and she collapses on the floor, has some creepy lines of dialogue too. And like I mentioned too, she knocks out Luis up against a wall, and Luis is just passed out. And she's like saying, Jesus is near, he's close, and that ain't even gonna save her. And she just collapses and she's dead there too. Um, what'd you think of that? Would
Oh,
compared to maybe Michael's death or
I
some of the other
yeah,
deaths we've seen in the movie so
it's
far?
I mean it's a great death for shock factor. Certainly
Right.
shocking to see two eyes get just bludgeoned out and just blood streaming down the face from both eyes.
Yeah.
I thought of something when you were talking about that.
Hmm.
There was a moment when she's sitting there, the nurse, when she's sitting there on the rocking chair and she's knitting, she looks fine, and there's this moment where she stops and she kind of has this dead stare as if something has come upon her. And we have that moment with the supposedly granddaughter of Charlie saying that, do you smell him? He's close now. He's within." And
Hmm.
the way I took that was that the love and the people within the household had slowly started to slip away, and they were worn down. They were no longer defensible. They didn't have their defenses up any longer, and the demon was now able to invade and take over these people. There was nothing holding them back at this point. So I think that moment of her having that dead stare was letting us know that the demon, this presence, was absolutely uncontrolled and had full reign of the remaining people within this house, which goes to our next scene we'll discuss with Louise. But this kill here, I think, is shocking. I definitely didn't see. I saw maybe
No,
the first eye coming. I didn't know about the second eye. So,
I feel like they did a fantastic job. I feel like I didn't know, like, there was a time too where like I even forgot about her, and they bring her back with that, and it's like holy cow. And I would have just thought, maybe, hey, I'm there, for a day, and then she just leaves, and then she just doesn't come back, or maybe she comes back to all these people dead or something, but and it gets reported or something like that along those lines of how this movie might wrap the bow on itself and kind of tie itself into a good ending, hopefully. And but no, they they slaughter her, so she's gone, and now we are, I think, left with Luis and her dad. And leading up to these final moments, I was sitting there wondering, how is this gonna end? Because clearly something's going on with him as well. He, the father had his own couple scenes where he's moving around. He's playing tricks on Luis. He's pinned to the ceiling at one point. Like everybody's included. There's nobody off this list that didn't have something happen to him, basically. And at the end, I guess we just kind of find out that he is the demon himself. Like that's where I was kind of questioning this ending. It felt like a little bit of a ripoff to me on how they ended it.
mhm.
I do not know about you. I'm curious to hear what you say.
Mm, mhm.
Um, because I'm not exactly for sure how it ends, but it's Luis sitting bed at his bedside, and he kind of just gets up and like snarl, like you can hear like a growl, and it just boom, it cuts, and you assume that she gets killed, and you wonder, are they going to make another movie now? Like, because this demon is clearly thriving.
Mhm.
Um, but man, I was just like, that's how it's going to end. I was just, it left a sour taste a little bit in my mouth. That's for sure. But I'm curious, what did you think? How do you think it might continue, or how like the storyline ties into that ending, or like just kind of what are you thinking about that?
Oh, I was getting a sip of wine there before I dive in here into this final moment. Very, very good, I thought. I like your theory of the dad potentially being the vessel for this entity throughout the entirety of the movie, and maybe we just didn't realize it. I think that's plausible. Is that what I
Yeah.
thought on my end? I don't think so, but I like it. I just
Mhm.
think that the family members one by one, once they were all consumed and taken out, I should say, that there were no more defenses left up. And that's why the mother did not want the family to come here, because she knew she wasn't fucking stupid. She knew there was something more to
Oh
what was
yeah.
going on, and that there
She,
was something very evil surrounding her. And she
yeah.
didn't want her family members to have to try to go through that same thing.
Yeah, and she'd been journaling about it too. I mean, there's evidence of
Yes, the
that dates
journal.
back to however
Mhm.
long ago she's been doing that.
You mentioned that earlier, and we didn't even really touch on it because it's kind of hard to remember all the stuff that was wrote down. But she was
Yeah.
writing a novel
She had a
of,
book.
yeah, a full book, man. So clearly, this demon, this evil that was residing in the household, like I said, knew no bounds and was absolutely out to get any kind of human being it could. While I can see why you're a little upset by the abrupt ending and the lack of clarity on the situation. I, for one, did kind of like it. I thought it was resolute. I think it actually gave us a definite ending as to this family perishing one by one, everyone they know and love, no matter how much they care about them, being offed and losing their lives in terrible ways. While
Hmm.
that sucks and that hurts, that is a part of the horror genre. And that's something that
Right.
is so impactful and resounding over the decades of horror. And it's so true to this genre. There are going to be deaths. You're going to care about people. It's going to eventually happen, and you have to be ready for it. You have to go through it. And unfortunately, this whole family loses their lives. And for me, I thought it was a clear ending. I think Louise is definitely killed there. But I do like your theory of him, the father, being the vessel all the while. I think that's absolutely believable.
Yeah, and what just kind of offed me too is like the the demon, if you will, right?
Mhm.
What is its kryptonite? Like they felt defenseless this whole movie, like they couldn't do anything. Like they had zero chance of surviving. I understand like some of these family members and the nurse and people kind of turned on them. And I mean, like the nurse even attacked Luis and things just kept happening, illusions kept happening. The priest, they couldn't even believe if that was a real priest or not after he disappeared
Yeah,
and vanished and he looked possessed. Like what is this thing's kryptonite? They did I you know, that was my one thing. It's like, you know, as these horrific things are happening, what can they do to help the situation? This movie, scene by scene, just another thing happens, another horrific death happens, another
yeah,
shit hits the fan, wild thing happens. It's like they can't even like catch up to the last thing that happened, I feel like, and they are just so defenseless. Like, you know, a classic demonology movie or possession movie, like, okay, an exorcist or something, that's real, that's a thing I believe in, whatever, whatever. This is so different and like, you know, they could have turned it into something where they can start learning about it, or maybe they find something about it where they can start doing things to maybe help their dad or like help each other out more. And like, there's just no kryptonite shown to maybe how to possibly defeat this thing. And that's where I got that sour taste in my mouth with how it ended because it's like, well, I guess this thing's just going to live on. And to see Louise go out like that after her brother leaving her, you know, she was loyal um, that whole time. No matter how much crying she did or emotion she had brought to the table, you know, she was there. So I don't know. That was my one thing. I knew this was going to be talked about, and I'm sure a lot of people that have seen this might agree, might not, might agree with June's. It's whatever, you know, take your pick. It's not your typical ending, I guess, to a movie with like how a lot of others are. You know, there's a storyline, it completes it. The ending is most times clear. Sometimes you get a situation like this. So that was my one thing. It's like, man, that just they felt so defenseless. But I'll keep or I'll quit ranting about it. But man, that just yeah, because it was a solid movie. I mean, you know, we'll get into ratings here, but man, yeah, that I don't know if it
I
had a different ending or an alternate ending, it my score would probably be higher. But who knows? Who knows? So,
I
do you see where
value
I'm coming from, though? At
yes, I
least, like,
value your notion there. Usually with these movies, we like to have some type of going back to the drawing board moments where we're having our main protagonist getting together and trying to battle this thing and to at
right?
least have some hope. So I can see where the despair and hopelessness can be so abundant that it turns off the viewer. I get that. So I totally respect your slant. I get it. Totally judgment free here, money. So with that being said, I think we're about review time, baby.
Yes, sir. Yep. So I will read off Rotten Tomatoes. So they have it audience score of 63%. Okay. They have a critic score of 91%.
Woo,
Yeah.
really?
So 91 as of today, 91%.
Holy
Um,
shit.
right.
Okay.
So that, you know, so however they did this and probably the ending, the critics must have loved it. They must have thought, the storyline matched well, the characters, the plot, and how it just kind of wrapped itself up, I guess. So, um, we'll get into it, but I'm a little more on the audience score. And I can get into it first if you want, or you can go ahead. It does not matter.
I can dive in. I am definitely appalled almost
Yeah,
by the critic score. I'm sorry. Hate
because
on me if
you
you
didn't
loved
know
it.
prior, did you?
No, I had
Of
no idea. I
so
had a
that's
feeling that the
yeah,
audience
right.
would be in that range, but a fucking
Or
a
balanced
90?
more, balanced more even. But
Yeah. So I'm
91.
surprised. I'm surprised, but I'm gonna give my review here money. I had a fun time with this one and I recommended it to you. We were thinking of movies to
Mm-hmm.
review for the upcoming future. And I said, hey, The Dark and the Wicked, it was one of our options. I'm like, hey, this is a decent one. I liked it. The first time I watched it with Colin, our special guest that we've had on a few times, we liked it. It was a good experience. So I recommended it to you. I just hope that whatever you have for a score, I just hope that it was worth your time. But we
Yeah.
will wait to see what you thought. My review here though is to start, The Dark and the Wicked is one of the more unforgiving horror films. And we've talked about
Ooh.
that
Yep.
frequently throughout the episode. Unforgiving. It doesn't the director, the writing, they don't give a damn about how you feel about these characters. Death is all around us, and this can happen. And sometimes there's simply nothing that can be done. And I think it's one of the most unforgiving I've watched in recent memory, where we're left with no living characters, no brighter day left at the end of the movie. Evil does not care whether you are good or bad. We've talked about it. And the film progresses in accordance with that belief. It never sways from it. Not all stories have happy endings, and we are reminded of life's fragility with every scene that takes place. I think the film alluded very beautifully to the reality of parents getting older and children losing touch. This is an honest, deep rooted fear in each and every one of us. And it is certainly on the minds of our protagonists all throughout. Sometimes love isn't strong enough to save a life, and this is plainly displayed throughout. Equal time was allotted to our protagonists, and because of this, we were able to understand their emotions and their decisions they were making. The setting and scares were satisfactory, but it was the deaths at the end for me that unfolded that really struck home. The majority of the film is paced just fine, but if I'm being frank, money, not much happened until the end. And because of that, I am going with a 7.1.
Gotcha. Man, I'll tell you what, we are in the ballpark. For me, and I love that was amazing, by the way. I love that. Um, for me, I get it. It's a slower paced movie. I think this is one of the better movies that has done that tactic. Like I mentioned earlier, it gives time to draw out these characters, even though it's a simple family. There's not many cast and crew members here, but we learn so much about them. Again, the family aspect of a lot of families, even in real life, aren't close. You're not close with your siblings, but there's times in life where you're drawn to each other for certain moments. And in this case, it's their dad literally on his deathbed. And they just got to help each other out. And they're trying to help their mom. Things start unfolding. The pace definitely picks up though, as I'm talking about it. Each death was pretty damn good. I can't abide by saying they were okay. Like they were pretty good. Um Not many, but man, they were pretty damn satisfactory. Um the storyline was pretty simple to follow. Some holy shit moments, Michael just being one of them. I love that. all around, dude, like I can't really complain about the movie. You know, I nitpicked earlier with the ending. A lot of people are probably going to do that have already seen this. And maybe if I do my own research, I can learn more about it too. Um, you know, even after doing this, it's cool looking back at it and figuring out what you can figure out and just learning about it. Um, but and again, I would recommend it as well. Um, Definitely a movie, maybe watch a couple few times a year. It was for me, and this is a big factor into my score, is the scare factor. And I'm not gonna lie, I was on my toes for a handful of moments throughout this. I did enjoy that. But with all that being said, I had this score from the first night I watched it, and I had a 7.3.
Woo!
So to see how we were that close,
Wow.
I said low sevens, and
You gotta be shitting me.
I couldn't pick an exact number, but I think putting it over a 7.5, even closer to an 8, for me it doesn't
No,
deserve it.
it
So
doesn't.
I will say though, in that range, it's a good movie. And it did for me deserve to be put over a 7. You know, it's the grading scale can be evil at times because you have to balance certain things, and then there might be a moment in the movie where it's like, oh well,
Hmm.
that bumps it up, whatever. But 7.3 for me, uh mark it in the books. But it's it was it was good. I can't just harp on it and say, oh, like it was slow, I didn't like the ending, whatever. It was easy to follow. I liked the kills, man. I was scared. First time seeing it. Released again in 2020. Um, and I can't honestly, at the end of the day, complain a lot about this movie. Definitely something to watch, kind of for me in the winter season, just because it's like that melancholy feeling, small town isolation. I
Yep.
love that. I am a fan of that, and I love how this director did The Strangers as well. Possibly a future episode that we do. And we got movies marked down too that we're going to be discussing in the future that we pick from that we've kind of collabed on, adding to the list as time goes on. But yeah, that kind of, when you said that, Junes, I was like, man, he is gonna love my score. That's so funny.
We were
But
so spot on, and to not say a
I think,
word and to be point two there away from each other is amazing. Amazing thing.
yeah, we do not
Amazing.
spoil each other's scores prior. We release our scores raw here as we're filming or recording these episodes. So that's kind of crazy. But yeah, again, 91 critic on Rotten Tomatoes, 63 audience. We again were right with each other. I think our thoughts and opinions were pretty spot on, obviously. Scores reflect that. So I I got nothing else. Overall, just a good damn classic horror film. Paranormal on that paranormal side though.
Yes.
Definitely different style, which I liked.
Yes.
I liked. It was first watch for me, so I definitely recommend it for you guys listening. So,
Yeah, I think that's a fucking wrap. I had a great time. I hope the people listening had a great time too. And please stay tuned. We are active on Spotify. We are on Apple Podcasts. You can also find us on YouTube at Scratching the Surface 100, as well as TikTok. We have been active on all of those. So I'm just grateful to once again be here with the man, Money himself, and to also share in this fucking love I have with similar people that absolutely adore this genre of film.
yep, I couldn't have said it, or you couldn't have said it better. Again, we wish you guys happy holidays and a good new year. Continue to tune in. We will be, I don't know, to be determined on the next episode, looking about a week. So stay tuned. That will be releasing. We'll have some teasers and stuff probably on TikTok as we've been doing. Make sure to check that out. But it's been a pleasure, Junes, and I love scratching the surface with this film. And it's been real, man.
Yes, absolutely. Thank you, Money.
Thanks, guys.